Hello, everyone. I'm quite excited to stand in such big audience. It's the biggest audience I ever spoke in front of for a long shot. But we can do this. Yeah. Before we start, there's a disclaimer I have to do. I am not a geo person, I'm more of a bio person. I did my PhD in bioinformatics, and 2.5 years ago, I stumbled into this project at the UFZ. And when I finally got the scope of what they are doing there, I found like, oh, that's such a topics we touch are have such a great intersection with this wonderful conference here, and I thought that somebody should hold a talk here. I tried to convince the main physicist of the project to come here and explain everything, but he got third time a father, and he found this dates a bit inconvenient. I don't know why. So I took it up and thought I apply for it and give you a little introduction into the topic. So now I talked a lot about my job, and I just wanted to give you a little location where this is. It's in Leipzig in the northeast, right above the Eisenbahnstraße, in the Wissenschaftspark. And there's another place where the UFZ is located in Halle, but the one in Leipzig is there. And yeah, it was formerly a big industrial complex with a dark history. There was a labor camp, and if you ever come to the Leipzig and be at the Eisenbahnstraße and want to learn a bit about the history about the city, there's a memorial place just for some travel advice. So now with all this little introduction, this talk will have two parts. One is the model and the Dürremonitor, and one is the measurement. I think they complement each other well. So the overarching topic of this talk is actually soil moisture, water in the earth, and there are two ways of knowing, like investigating it, and one is on a model perspective and one is on a measurement perspective. So, and with that, I start with the Dürremonitor, and this is one of the pictures you can get right now from the at the webpage of the UFZ. It shows the summer of 2018, and they use a scale of droughtness, and the scale of droughtness goes, in this case, from 0 to 0.2, where 0 is no drought, but 0.2 is an exceptional drought. It's depicted in purple here, and you only get the real purple if you have if all days in the observed period, in the summer period, are the driest in a long-term projection. You would get something like 0.1 if half of the days would be an exceptional drought and half of them would not be. That is actually impossible to get from the model. The other more likely scenario is that all days were something around 10th percentile of droughtness or dryness. So the main thing I want to show here is the perspective of what the Dürremonitor wants to accomplish. I just picked out, this was the year of 2018, and they look at the droughtness in Germany over a period of from 1950 to recent, and they look at this. They think of as drought as a deviation from a long-term mean. The time scale they use in the model is the daily model, and the spatial scale, the grid they apply to Germany, is a 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer grid cell. So one of the things that can happen if you look at these data is that these deviation does not necessarily mean what we think of as a drought. And there's one article made by the Bayerische Landesanstalt für Wald- und Forstwirtschaft, where they compared that with the field capacity. And if you think of a drought, mostly you would think of dry plants, willing plants, yellow grass, and then the better measurement for that is the field capacity, which is a measurement or an estimation of how much suction a plant needs to generate to get water out of the soil into the body of the plant. And around 30% is the willing point, so where there's leaves go limp, and around 60% is already the point where crops have not are not as efficient and will lose some of their crop yield. And what they did in the article, they compared with the droughtness of that day. So this is like on the right side, you see measurements, and you see the measurements in various weather stations of the LVF, and you only see that one of them is dry. And if you compare this with what the Dürremonitor at that time showed, it looked like all of Bavaria was in a serious drought. And that depends on the perspective. Like, there are multiple things that could happen actually on this specific day. But the main thing is that only if it's drier than before does not mean that it's dry for a plant. So if you look at these, many of the data they provide, that's something you should keep in mind. One other thing is that from the model, you can actually also derive to the field capacity that has something to do with the soil as well. So it's not only the water in the soil, but it's also what soil type you have. And the UFZ provides the field capacity as well, but this is not their main perspective on the subject. So now I talked a lot about the model and what is this model? What is the model? The model is called MHM, the Mesoscale Hydrological Model, and they have this wonderful graphic, I think, where basically you can. It's almost self-explanatory. The thing is that they want to have a physical model. They want to have a representation of the physical world in terms of where water runs through the system, and they model for transpiration, evaporation, runoff, water runoff in streams, soil, snow formation, snow melting. All these processes are modeled in this big Fortran model, and the thing what you keep in mind now is like this is not specifically for soil moisture, and actually the model is optimized for stream flows. So they use a certain set of parameters. They take the precipitation data as the main input, so the rain data, and then they run the model and they look how well the model performs on the amount of water they can that runs off in rivers, because water in rivers, or how much water is running down a river, is fairly easy to measure compared to measuring, for instance, soil moisture, which we see in a few slides. So that's something you should keep in mind. Soil moisture is basically just a byproduct, what you can read out from the model. There are a lot of things you could say about the model, but I just wanted to point something out that I found probably find interesting as a developer or something who is programming. The thing is, this model starts at 12 o'clock at the night and then runs, I think, for 4 hours. It collects the rain data, extrapolates the data, corrects it, blah, 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 runs the model, and then makes the consecutive statistical analysis that in the end results in these different maps. And they want to get it of course quickly, and one of the things that you can do is parallelizing it. And the interesting part is how they segregate the data sets, and that's interesting because it is based on the physical world. What they do is they look at the landscape and they fragment the landscape into catchments. So a catchment is an area of land where all the precipitation water would run off in one point, mostly a stream. And if you look at the this landscape, they would separate the landscape into these catchments, and with that you get an order of calculation. So you can first you do 1, 2, 3, 4, the catchment 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can calculate the catchments below. And so the thing is, you have some interactions between the catchments. So if you have a really steep ridge along the two catchments, then they are fairly well separated. But if the ridge is not that steep and long, you have some interaction, and they account for this. So they are not perfectly independent of each other, but you can make them independent. And to make them independent, you have these subsurface ghost cells where you have some of these interaction modeled into it. Yeah, and before I leave, I want to present one of these last thing I want to say about the model and the Dürremonitor is this paper I found really interesting. Has a fantastic title in my opinion. It could have been much worse, spatial counterfactuals of the July 2021 flood in the Ahr Valley, Germany. The thing is with models, so two things now, we only talked about drought, but as you remember, the model is actually optimized for streamflow, so it can be used for flood events. And as it is a model, we can play with the counterfactual, the what happens if scenarios. And in this paper, for instance, they showed it could have been much worse, something we probably all need to get familiar with. Yeah, and with this, I want to go to the measurements. So one of the, I introduce you now to 3 basic measurement types, and the most basal measurement type is the so-called gravimetric soil moisture method, where you basically stump a piece of soil, seal it, bring it to the lab, put it into these gravimetric ovens, weigh it, bake it for a certain amount, and then you measure it again, and the water that's the difference in weight is the water ratio, the water content. And that obviously doesn't scale. It's tedious work, and this method is mostly used as a something to validate other methods of measurements. One of the most widely used methods on how to measure soil moisture is the TDR sensor, the time domain reflectometry. That basically works like you put this two metal rods into the soil, and then electromagnetic high frequency electromagnetic pulse sent down these 2 rods, reflected at the bottom and sent up again, and you measure the time. And a bit counterintuitive, I think, on the first thing is that it takes more time the more water is in the soil. The reason for that is that the water molecules are unorientated in the soil at the beginning, and when the electromagnetic field is near them, they orientate themselves towards it. It's the negatively charged oxygen butt and the positively charged hydrogen arms, basically, they orientate themselves. And the turning of molecules is way slower than an electromagnetic pulse. And because basically the pulse cannot travel further as long as not all of the molecules are turned. That's actually physically not correct, but that's always how I think of it. Yeah, and on the left side you see one of these really cheap ones that are like, I think, $20, and on the right side you see a device, more professional version. Another way of measuring soil moisture is these GPR, the ground penetrating radars. The device you see here is a commercially used device for construction sites. You could use these devices as well for measuring the soil moisture. They basically work on the same principle. The radar signal that is sent into the ground is slower when it is in a wetter soil. It gets reflected by something, for instance, the bedrock, and gets sent back and then measured by the machine. The problem with this method is that you don't know how deep, at which depth the bedrock is. So the best thing is to really dig a hole and measure the depth of the bedrock, and that's becoming impractical. There are some ways of estimating the depth of the bedrock, but that has some downsides. And now we come to this measurement device they use in our working group, in our department. You see 3 devices on the left, on the bottom on the left. There's a mobile version put on a trolley. In the middle, you see a stationary sensor that's independent. On the top, you see a small stationary sensor that's mostly used for calibration purposes. And the cool thing is, it is portable, movable. You can basically pull it on the trolley around and measure the soil moisture going around. It doesn't need to be set up at a place, even though it can be and will increase the quality of the measurements. And it doesn't make a point measurement as a specific point. For instance, the TDR just measures the soil moisture at a given point. And that could be working if you have something rather more homogenetic, like a field, but it's really unpractical for most soil areas where you look at, because it's really heterogenic. Sometimes there's a rock, the depth varies. And the cool thing with these CRNS sensors, they measure basically all the water molecules in a sphere of 300 meters around the device, 200 to 300 meters. But how do they work? You can open up one of these stationary sensors, and you will see a lot of different stuff. But the heart of these sensors are these 2 tubes. They are filled with heavy helium. One of them is a bare tube, and the other one is a moderated tube. That means that it is coated with polyethylene. And if you look at the bare tube, they have a metal shield, metal outside, and a metal wire in the inside. And between both of them, there's a voltage. And what now can happen if you have a neutron that is flying through one of these cylinders, this neutron can interact with the heavy helium. The reaction is heavy hydrogen, tritium, and a proton, and energy. They will fly off into different direction and then will interact with the gas molecules in these tubes and will basically take off electrons of these atoms, of the molecules, and these electrons then travel through to the positively charged electric wire in the middle, and this can be then detected as a voltage change. And so basically what these tubes are, or the setup is they are neutron collision detector. So they work in counts. So far so good, but how do we get to this? I make a really simplified version of the understanding of this, is that the moderated tubes count the neutrons from above, and the bare tube counts the neutrons coming from below, and the ratio of them gives us an estimate of the soil moisture. First of all, what's the difference between neutrons coming from above and neutrons coming from below? In physical terms, you call them thermal neutrons and epithermal neutrons. That's referring to the energy that these neutrons have. If they have the normal energy they have, they are the thermal neutrons, and if they're coming from above, they have a higher energy, and they call it the epithermal neutrons. The thing is with the why do moderated tubes collect better or count better the neutrons coming from above? The reason for this is that the other way around. Bare tubes can detect normal bare tubes can only detect the neutrons with a small energy, and neutrons with high energy would mostly just fly through the machine and do not interact already with the heavy helium. Only if they have a shield around them, they first of all the polyethylene shield will stop some of the thermal neutrons and also give a chance to epithermal neutrons to interact with the shield and lose some of their energy, and then can be measured. So, okay, first of all, the two main questions probably arise now is where do the neutrons come from? Do we need to have a large radiation machine that produces neutrons, and why does the ratio of the between the epithermal and the thermal neutrons give us some estimation of the soil moisture? So first of all, we are lucky. We do not need this big device who shoots neutrons around. We just get them naturally by the means that the cosmic ray energy that is produced by supernova and such things in the galaxy, this energy is flying down, flying through the universe, and might be interacting with our atmosphere, with nitrogen or oxygen, and then they knock off neutrons from these molecules. These neutrons then will more or less, first of all, they travel in all directions, but at the time they come down, most of them will be almost vertically relative to the Earth's surface. These ones still have high energy. They might have interacted already with some of the gas molecules on their way down, but still have high energy, and then they will hit basically the Earth's surface and interact with the mass of the Earth. And some of them will completely lose their energy. Neutrons will merge with other atoms from certain isotopes. Some of them will get reflected back up again, and at that point will have lost a lot of the energy, and these ones are called the thermal neutrons. And the funny thing is that the rate of reflection or the rate of absorption is mainly determined by hydrogen, and the hydrogen mostly occurs in the soil in the form of water. So the higher the water content in the soil, the more absorption of nutrients will happen. And so by finding these the ratio between both, you can determine the soil moisture. So the next few slides, a little trigger warning, there will be some math equations. But don't worry, I colored them, so just look at the colors. And the two slides are, okay, now you got the counts, but how do you proceed? The first thing you need to do is correcting for it. As I mentioned, you collect all radiation in a sphere of 300 meters. That means that you also collect measurements coming from above, and you only want to get basically the neutron counts that happens by interactions in the ground. So you correct for the humidity of the air because, again, the main determinant for neutron absorption is water, and same means by pressure, so more pressure, more molecules, more humidity, more water molecules. And you also need to correct for the actual incoming cosmic ray at that time, because that fluctuates over time. And these measurements you get from basically two neutron count devices. One is located in Kiel, and one is located in the Jungfraujoch, next to the highest post office in Europe. And if you have this, then you have your corrected neutron counts. And what you then can do is either calculate the volumetric soil moisture or the gravimetric soil moisture. You have some empirically derived constants. You have the corrected neutron counts, and you either multiply or divide by the density of the soil to either get the volumetric or the gravimetric soil moisture. And then there are these two other factors you have in mind. These are the N0, which basically is a measurement for what you measure over dry soil, and the soil moisture offset. This is determined by how much hydrogen is in the soil by itself. And these two factors must be estimated when you have a moving device, but can be better, can be either completely measured in a stationary device or at least better estimated. So that's the reason why properly set up devices have a higher quality measurements, of higher measurement quality. So next things is, one of the cool things, like crispy chili oil, you can put that on basically anything. And when I compiled these slides, I just had the idea that they always have this unprofessional version, and then they had made the professional version, where let's see, can we put it on a trolley? Yeah, that works. And then they made this professional version where they put it on a rover and make proper surveys in fields. And also there's like, driving around is maybe a little bit difficult, let's drive it around by the train. So that's the Harz Schmalspurbahn, the little Bimmelbahn in the Harz. If you ever come there, one of these devices is permanently installed in there. And they started with this setup, and now they made it much more professional. They put it on cargo trains, and they hope to put it on many more devices, many more cargo trains. One thing I completely forgot to tell you, so far that looks like this measurement device has no downsides. Heavy helium is really expensive, so these cylinders cost quite a bit of money. So the main limitation of these measurements are the initial costs of buying these machines. Interestingly, another thing I mentioned, every time a neutron hits a neutron is counted, one heavy helium gets lost. So you might think, how long do these tubes actually work until all the helium's gone? That's not a problem. It takes like over 1,000 years until all of these helium molecules are so degraded that you cannot measure anymore from it. So basically you have this large investment in these heavy helium cylinders, but once you have them, they run with little energy and are fairly easy to maintain. So one of the other things I hope it was something like this when they discussed something about like, we want to have be able to better correct for all these things that happen above the ground. What happens if we measure above on water? Because then you really know how wet the ground is. It's 100%. Or and they, I hope they had a good day going to one of the nice lakes in Leipzig and paddling around in these devices. And that turned out to be working, so they made it, again, more professional, put it on a Polarstern, let it travel through the Antarctica. And one of the interesting things you can see is here on the left side, you see the neutron counts, and they vary because of the Earth's magnetic field that shields off the radiation. You have much more higher neutron counts at the poles than you have at the equator. That's something you definitely need to account for instance, if you want to use these devices in Africa or anywhere along the equator. One other thing is, snow definitely has a big impact on these measurements. Let's put them on a sled and go skiing. That worked, make it more professional. And for the last step, I think they just skipped the unprofessional version and they straight go to Zeppelin mode. That's actually really interesting because there was a Nobel Prize in physics for finding out this neutron radiation, and that was a person who, a physicist, I forgot the name, who measured these this radiation, and he flew up with a balloon, and the higher he flew, the less radiation he measured. Thus, he concluded the only way that this is logically you get it if you have radiation coming from below. And the thing is that the higher you go, the less radiation you see. That's also why you have your measurements will get more not as precise, but up to 30 meters you still can see something. That's some simulation that was done. So to wrap it all up, how do they compare the MHN and the CRNS? And they do compare fairly well. There's a larger study. You can see at the bottom. Oh, I hope all these slides will be at media.ccc. So if you're interested in anything I presented here, you can click on Boeing et al. If you go to the slides. Yeah, and here you see a comparison between standard methods and the CRNS and the MHN. One thing I do not like about this graphic is that you see the deviation of the CRNS, but you don't see the deviation of the model or the other measurements. So I think it's difficult to compare them, but they most of the time show the same. So when I think of it, why do we do all this? There is, at the moment, not a real big project I could point to you that this works heavily uses. But we go into chaotic times, and if you want to pull out an ace off your sleeve, you first have to put one in there. And this research takes time. And if we really want to have something that we can use in the future, in the uncertain future, we have already to put work into these fields and develop them. Otherwise, we will not have them when we really need them. And with that, I'm finished. I think I have really small, I almost took up all time. 2 questions? Okay. If anybody wants.
All right. Thank you very much. That was very fast.
That was your job, right?
I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was a bit,
No.
well, on the spot. But, so do we have questions in the room or on the interwebs? Signal Angel? No? All right, then let me start with, there's a question. Okay. Be fast. Microphone 4, let's go.
Okay, so how much time does it take to have a good measurement if you have a moving?
That's a good point. Like obviously you count and you make an integral over the time. So the longer the better. That's basically the answer. The longer the better. The other thing is if you look at the fastest moving mobile version is the trains, the cargo trains. And if you look at what they put in there, that's almost like a fridge. So they have a lot of helium tubes. So you can travel, if you want to travel quick and you will still want to have reliable measurements, you put more helium tubes in them. So that's something where you can, I do not know the specifics of how fast you can travel and still get reasonable measurements. But they travel by 200 kilometers and they get reads. How reliable? Yeah.
All right, there's a question on the internet.
Yes, does the loss of helium after reacting into hydrogen affect the measurements?
So they, I do not understand. Yeah, the question perfectly well. They get lost, and the degradation of the heavy helium is the actual measurements. So I'm not sure. I hope this answers the question. And as I said, when they degrade, the degradation is not a problem in terms of that that the tubes run out of heavy helium.
Yeah. All right, microphone number 1.
Hello, so I'm skipping my first question. Second question would be, if you put it on trains, such as this one there, you got the GCRs, high energetic stuff, also moderated by your vehicle. So do you encounter for your background radiation generated by your vehicle or your local environment?
Sorry, can you repeat? I did not fully understand. You
will get a lot of neutrons or a couple of neutrons generated by your steel construction there, by a train, by your stuff
the train itself generates neutrons?
Yep.
You mean?
Yeah, background radiation, yes. You have fast, it's a moderator as well.
I was not aware of that.
Okay,
I have to ask. Yeah, I cannot comment on that. I would look it up. So far I have not heard of this being a problem. One other thing I only can say is that they put lead shield beneath it, so they don't want to see the neutrons coming directly from the bedrock of the train. But I don't know how what happens with with neutrons coming from the train itself. Sorry.
All right, and with that, we sadly are out of time. But maybe before we thank our speaker, you can tell us where we can find you or contact you for further questions or more discussion.
I will stand here at the side, and I have not. I mean, I could tell my email, but no. I mean, just come to the side if you want to meet me in person. It's okay. And
all right, let's thank our speaker.
I have only. My job ends in 2 months, so I'm out of this project anyways. So hopefully this inspired the physicist Martin to maybe come next year. I hope he would do. He would be a really good fit in here. And then you have much more questions. Thanks.